And on today's show, what life insurance companies are looking for in the results of the exam. Part 5 of this week's series, Preparing for a Life Insurance Exam with paramedical examiner Kevin Jensen. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician and Newsmark. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to the show, day 5, Kevin.
Thank you.
Wow, all this week we've been learning all the ins and outs of the paramedical facility. I have to tell you, I'm looking at some of your more exotic exams that you do on the side. Now, we used to look at x-rays. We did some x-rays. Boy, that has really kind of went the way of the dodo.
You know, we've seen a lot of changes in the requirements for carriers, and that x-ray, haven't done one of those for a while.
But there's still treadmills. Now, of course, nobody's going to your house with a treadmill. We're actually outsourcing that to a medical facility that's qualified to do that.
Exactly. We've actually done a mobile treadmill before, where we've actually contracted with a mobile treadmill that went to the client's home. The agent had to pay big for that one, but that was what he wanted to do for his client. But most of the time, it is done at a doctor's office.
I mean, what do they pull it down?
It's in a trailer.
It's huge.
Pull it right up to the client's home.
Wow, I haven't seen one of those. So they actually could do it at the client's home.
Yeah.
Or their office or wherever. Now I noticed I kind of look at regular urine examples. When I take a sample, that's about 3 weeks back in my history, right? Mm-hmm. So when I do a urine exam, what I've been doing for the last 3 weeks is going to show up in my urine, and that's where it is. But when I look at more exotic tests like hair follicle testing, now why do we even do that? First of all, let's just talk about that. Why am I pulling a piece of my hair follicle out of my head?
Well, hair actually goes back a lot more in time frame. We could go back as far as 3 months to find out what the client has been doing.
Now, are we doing that in substitute for a urine exam, or no, we're looking for something else?
Yeah, that would be for something else. It won't substitute a urine exam.
Okay, so am I doing that for drug testing primarily?
Exactly.
So for cocaine users, I'm assuming cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines. I mean, the client says, I've stopped taking it. But if he does the hair follicle test, right? I mean, that exam is not cheap.
And a lot of those drugs will show up in the blood result also. This is something that somebody's not just going to be able to say, no, I'm not taking it. Mm-hmm. It'll show up. All
right, so he could have a dirty urine exam, UA, and then he could also have the hair follicle could test going back at least 90 days. God, I thought it was longer than that, actually. So those two tests will really look at drug. I mean, we have so much drug testing now because our society has changed so much. And so those exams are there, and I like for the real honest client who said, listen, I used to be a bad boy, now I'm a good guy, now I'm not doing this anymore. He freely, I see people volunteer all the time. If going into it, would the client have to pay if we said, are you sure you've not done anything? And we do the exam and it turns out to be positive?
You know, I think this is one of those we'd like to know it earlier.
Right.
I'm sure the underwriter would like to know it earlier than trying to find out about it later.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at all the things that we test for. I mean, we just talked about some of the more exotic testing that we do, treadmills. We're talking about x-rays that we've kind of went away from. Now we're talking about hair follicle testing for drug use. But when we're looking at a panel of blood and urine exam. I got my results. It shows everything I need to know. It tells me where my normal range is, where I'm out of normal range. And what I like about those exams is this, if you're out of normal range, it'll say, oh, and this could be indicative of prediabetes, as an example. I kind of like how they explain that. And what I like about it, it's in English. It's not in medical language, so it's easy for a client to understand. Exactly. And sometimes I'd like to take an exam just because, or a life insurance, if you're looking for life insurance, this is one of your key reasons. I love to get that free exam. And I give that to my doctor, I put that in my file, I got it down. Now I notice this is certainly not the all-inclusive list, but it's a pretty thorough list. We're looking at about 15 things that I have here. We're looking for things like, we're looking at it for sugar. You know, they're gonna look at my glucose, and they're gonna look at that level, and they're gonna see, is that in normal range? When I'm looking for things like glucose, this could be another thing of prediabetes, one of the things we talked about. When you're looking at, from a paramedical point of view, you don't see any of this yourself. You're just doing the exam, sending it on to the lab. But we're testing for things like sugar, high protein levels. This is why you talked about, hey, you got to watch yourself if you're a high protein diet. We've talked about this before.
Exactly.
And you said it. But now, we mentioned this when you said in earlier. You said, Steve, we can't eat high cholesterol foods before our exam, and that's going to mess our HDL ratio up. It's also going to take our bad, they have your good, they say it's good cholesterol and my bad cholesterol. Talk to me a little bit about the cholesterol, because I think that's where people kind of like, hey, they get weird on this. They need to eat a little bit better before the exam. It's not just fasting 14 hours, it's eating better about a week out.
Exactly. There's a DHL that you want to be concerned about when it comes with that diet that you're taking. The exercise that you're doing prior to the exam, days before, will actually increase that HDL mark. We want to bring the DHL down. That's going to be the food that you're eating.
Let me ask you a question on that. Now, I'm a walker every day, 30 minutes a day. So when should I stop walking, preparing for this exam?
Probably the day before.
Oh, so it's not that big a deal.
Exactly.
For a day before, okay. Now, I noticed that it also tests for liver and pancreas function, and I was thinking, it's going to check my renal issues. It's going to have those numbers panels, but I'm also getting checked for hepatitis. I was like, wow, is this an issue in America? That they were looking for this?
I think a lot of times people don't even know they have it. So it's a test that they're going to do. Again, the underwriter's going to look at everything for that client, and that's part of it.
When we come back from the break, we're going to touch on some of the other things that the life insurance companies are looking for, and I'm really interested in what you just said there, and we'll pick that up right after the break.
It's not how much money you make for your clients, it's how much money they get to keep, especially in retirement. But retirement income could cause Social Security benefits to be taxed. One tax advantage alternative is life insurance, designed as a non-modified endowment contract that can generate tax-free income without taxing Social Security benefits. These contracts offer differing funding options depending upon your client's risk tolerance. For more information on how life insurance can be part of your retirement planning, just email me at steve@downtobusiness.tv. Brought to you by Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company.
Well, welcome back to our second segment. Of course, I'm with Kevin Jensen, our paramedic in par excellence. And Kevin, you said something before the break. You said a lot of times we're doing an exam and people discover something they didn't even know they had.
Well, sometimes it could have been years prior before they've had a blood draw before. And that's information that will come out in this exam. All the tests that they do will bring out those readings to the client.
One of the top ones, I remember, I don't know, I want to get into it now as far as the names and so forth, but we've had people discover they were HIV positive simply based by taking a paramed for a life insurance exam.
Exactly.
That was a huge discovery. Cancer is huge. Male, female, your PSA really matters in this. Talk to me about that, because that's another precursor. We can kind of get an idea what's going on in our system.
Yep, that PSA test is going to tell an underwriter. It's also going to tell yourself what your colon is doing and what your pancreas is doing. That's going to be a cursor. That test alone is something that you'll have done, I think, after age of 45. You should have that done at your doctor. But that test alone, if they have not had to drive, will bring out that information. We've had a lot of people find out some bad news with that test.
Well, I tell you what, it's very interesting. Like I said before, we should be, at certain ages, you need to start taking regular exams. I just had to go through my first colonoscopy. When you get to a certain age, they just want you to take it. They just want to scope you out. And by the way, just in case anybody's caring about, Steve had no polyps. He was golden. So, and I'm surprised at that just because of I'm not as good an eater as I should be. Yeah. Now we're talking about, I know they're looking for kidney disorders, diabetes especially, type 1, type 2, adult, onset, adolescent. Am I using insulin? Am I using diet to control it? It is the number one issue. We talk about obesity right now. And there are certain carriers. By the way, this is another thing I just want to bring up. Remember, if I know going in a certain impairment or a certain substandard issue that my client has from a medical point of view, there are carriers better in certain arenas than other carriers. So you have to really shop your client's impairment by the actual carrier that you're looking at, because there's certain carriers I would never go to for diabetes. Exactly. They're not really good about it. They're not going to give your client a good read. Talk about, though, diabetes. When we're taking most of our diabetics they know what it's like to be poked, so they're not going to have a problem with a needle, right? Generally,
exactly.
Right? So for our diabetes, is there, when a person knows he's going into it, there's nothing to hide here. He already knows he has it. So prepping for the exam isn't only going to do anything more or less for him.
Yeah, again, it falls back to if the client's going to not take their medications for the morning or there. The client that has diabetes at that time is still going to do what they need to do prior to the exam. We're not going to tell them to stop taking or doing their insulin.
when I'm looking for all these things as a client, of course, I do want to know what my real health is, and I love this exam because it's going to give me a basic idea, at least from my chemistry of my body,
Exactly.
at least put me in position. When I'm looking at this from an underwriting point of view, there's going to be, we are parsing these exams so specific now. As I mentioned a couple of shows back, you know, when you have super preferred non-smoker, preferred plus non-smoker, preferred non-smoker, standard plus non-smoker, standard, right? And I know we go up to table 16, but I haven't seen a table A in a decade. Easy. I mean, we're not even quantifying people like that. But your exam results are so important for pricing. This is, I guess, my real reason. Now, we're always looking for the bad boy issues. What if your client's really trying to come up and they're very good exercise, they have great diet? I mean, I've noticed that the next generation up is much more healthier than we are. Mm-hmm. And so they're really going out of their way on diet and exercise. And I'm seeing more super preferred, especially females, below age 40, because their numbers are stellar. We are the first generation, their generation, maybe the millennials more than the boomers. Mm-hmm. I think the actual millennials generation is probably the first generation that from the get-go is you're learning to eat better, diet. I mean, think about this. Why are we doing this exam in the first place? We're doing it for life insurance, but what are we trying to quantify? The client's mortality.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We want to find out that risk for the carrier. That's what this whole exam is for.
And if you think that we're parsing it this much, I mean, think about this. If you take the 2001 life expectancy tables for the CSO, you'll notice that our numbers are stretching. When I came into this around the 1958, we're now around the 2001. We're just living longer, and they're looking at these exams to see how long will the client live based on your blood chemistry and EKG.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance officer. Missed an episode? Just hop out to our video archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an educated advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week.